September 21st, 2022. Well, it looks like first thing we might want to notice is that we've got news that the illegal immigrants into this country this fiscal year, starting from October the 1st last year until now, I guess through August, has exceeded 2 million. And I know that sometime back before the last presidential election, I warned that we end up with 6 million illegal immigrants if Biden was elected. Well, obviously that was a conservative estimate. We're going to exceed that. I guess at this point we'll probably reach somewhere around 8 million during his term at least, which is a massive amount of people that are poor and have limited resources to try to assimilate. If they want to be assimilated. And at any rate, that's kind of the situation we have. This is a criminal behavior by the Biden administration, of course. Totally an impeachable offense, but of course he won't be removed from office because the Democrats will not vote to do so. And there's no way the Republicans in any scenario would get to 67 senators before the end of his term. So that's just it's just not an option. I kind of addressed things in my last video. You need to look at politics from the point of view of what's actually possible, rather than what somebody might want. And so that's he's in there and doing it. I think there may be, depending on the outcome of the election, if the Republicans win control of the Congress, there may well be some show impeachments of maybe cabinet officers and so forth, sort of like the show impeachments of Trump that occurred under the Democrats, but they still don't lead to any actual result. So at any rate, by the way, if you like these videos, please subscribe and give me a like on the video. Helps with the algorithm, and you can ring the bell, to get notified. The comments appreciated. So that's kind of the situation here. The big development, of course, is the reaction to the flying of the 50 illegal immigrants to Martha's Vineyard. And the fact that the state called out the National Guard to have them removed, and I guess they're currently on some military base. And meanwhile, left activist lawyers apparently have got involved and are now trying to make some kind of a lawsuit against Governor DeSantis or something. Which is interesting because they actually did sign a form agreeing that they wanted to travel. I guess the claim they're making is they were promised something they weren't delivered. Of course, we'll have to see how that turns out. I tend to think that'll probably go nowhere. Again, we'll have to see. I mean, if at any rate you're battling a government, and I would think that sovereign immunity would probably apply to the governor. So essentially, it's more like a lawsuit effectively against the state, I think. But we'll have to wait and see how the courts handle it and where it goes in the court system, as always. But that seems to be the latest thing. And then we have this crazy sheriff in Texas that's trying to go after DeSantis also, but he doesn't know what law, local, state, or federal, he would charge under. And it's also unclear to me what jurisdiction he has. He may very well try to harass whoever it was that arranged for the trip in his area. It's more likely to be what he's going to do. But I thought it was kind of interesting to see this is the left's reaction to this. But on the other hand, it has broken through the news blockout, and people now know this is going on and kind of know why it's going on. So it may be a net plus. The Democrats think it'll be a backlash, and we'll just have to see. So far, I haven't seen any real polling on the subject and what impact it has. So anyway, so that's kind of where we are on all that issue, and we're continuing with the campaign. Looking at the polling, hasn't changed much since my last video. Right now, I think that the Democrats have a lead of 2.7 roughly in terms of registered voter polls, and the Republicans have a lead of 3.5% in terms of likely voter polls, as last I've looked on Real Clear Politics. If you just do a pure arithmetic merger of the two polls, you'll get a 1.1% favorable to Democrats. However, you're mixing apples and oranges there. One of the interesting things, the latest NBC poll has it as a flat-out tie, and that's a registered voter poll. So using the normal idea that likely voters are going to tend toward the Republicans from the registered voters, that would still seem to pretty much support the 3.5% likely voter level that we get on those two polls. So actually, I think it looks to me like that things are looking fairly good for the Republicans. Another thing I would point out that aside from polling, as you get into the final voting, a lot of what apparently is happening is there's still some apprehensive people that just aren't prepared to at least state to pollsters what they're going to do. But when you look at the current level of what we call the right track, wrong track poll, which is a classic poll, it's about 30% right track and 70% wrong track for the U.S., with a president whose popularity is somewhere in the 40 to 45% range. Rasmussen's latest is 43, down a little bit from its peak. So it looks like his latest performance is starting to slide again. So all in all, and given it's an off election year, the year after the primary election, and inflation is still high, the economy is definitely at best a neutral and probably in a recession, although a mild one at this point. I tend to think that the idea that the Democrats actually gain ground in that environment just makes no sense at all. It looks like the Republicans should score a fairly good win and get control of the House. The Senate always is more problematic because of the limited number of races and the idiosyncrasies of the candidates in the states in question. But, at least we would probably think that they'll be able to maintain the tie they currently have at a minimum of not gaining a seat or two. So it depends on it. I'm looking some good numbers coming out of the Wisconsin lately. It looks like Ron Johnson's kind of doing better, and also good numbers coming out of Georgia. Arizona's interesting that it looks like that Lake may be taking the lead in the governor's race, whereas Masters a little bit behind apparently in the Senate race. However, and so we'll have to see how that turns out there. There's all kinds of rumors about what is or isn't being funded. I just saw another thing that McConnell pulled money out of the master race in Arizona, but yesterday I heard that in fact he was putting money into it. So this sounds like a lot of noise and not much signal. So we'll have to see there. Another topic I want to get to here is that something seems to be brewing in the Ukraine war right now. In the last couple of days, apparently Putin was going to make a major speech today, but it's been postponed by a day. There's rumors that there's significant troop movements, both on the Russian side and potentially on the Ukrainian side, that's going on. An airborne division is being pulled out of Syria by Russia and potentially be sent into Ukraine. And it looks like, on the other hand, the Ukrainian offensive has gained some significant ground the last couple of weeks. And there's discussion about the status of some troops that are on the west side of the Dnieper River. I think that's how you pronounce it. It does have a silent D, I think it is. But at any rate, and that is, they're at risk, potentially, having low supplies. So it looks like things are starting to develop here. And the significant thing is there's also these votes, these referendum votes or whatever, for the breakaway areas to be incorporated formally into Russian territory. And of course, presumably those votes will succeed. The U.S. State Department, I'm sure, is saying they're completely rigged, and the Russians will say they're legitimate. I'm going to pass on the legitimacy, but the point is, if Russia formally claims that they're part of Russian territory, then it would seem to me, and that right now, the Russians have been hamstrung by their own laws on the ability to use all the Russian forces available, including their conscripts, in the war. Because of laws I'm presuming were probably passed during the Yeltsin period. I don't know. I mean, the thing is, everybody over here tries to think of Russia today in terms of the Soviet Union back during the days of Brezhnev and that period. And this isn't what you're dealing with today. You're dealing with a republic that's certainly has a very high degree of corruption. It's a republic in which political opponents can be imprisoned or killed. Um, people, this is is not a one that meets our standards at all. But on the other hand, it's not an absolute dictatorship either. It's kind of an oligarchy, I guess, with Putin being the strong man. Hard to exactly characterize it. Maybe a little bit like some of the authoritarian regimes that we had a few decades ago in South America. At any rate, in terms of the point I'm making is that once this vote is done and they're formally incorporated into Russia according to their law, that would give him the right then to use full Russian military forces to defend homeland territory. Now they're defending their homeland. In their view, you might call it war, but in their view, and not simply not engage in a special military operation overseas or outside their country, how you want to say it, not really over a sea, but you get what I'm trying to say. It's inside their, and so if this development may mean that Russia is going to actually escalate the war, because obviously the NATO support for Ukraine has been successful in putting them on the offensive, and so they have to do something or they're going to lose. And so we'll just have to wait and see what that something is, and maybe or will there be some power struggle inside of Russia that would lead to the deposing of Putin? I don't know. There was a delay in the speech. We just don't know what's happening. And we'll probably, the time you see these videos, we'll have a better idea. But I think that things are starting to break here, that something is going to have to happen. So anyway, I just thought I'd mention that too in closing here. And as always, I have the the addresses of my social media accounts, and you can follow me on there because I do post, particularly on Twitter, quite a bit. I'm trying to post a little bit more on some of the others, Gab and the True Social, and see if we can get more activity there. And so at any rate, and of course I post these videos on Rumble, which on the last video I actually got some following there. So at any rate, I will close for now, and until next time.